Greetings all, and welcome to Daily Pali Reading. Today we are going to be reading from the Milindapañho, or the Milindapañha. This is found in the Khuddaka Nikaya only of the Burmese edition of the Tipitaka. I think in Thai, Sri Lanka, and the other canons it isn't included, but if you do want to look it up on the tipitaka.org's website, it is in the Khuddaka Nikaya, near the bottom of the list. Milindapañha, or Milindapañho, means questions of Milinda. Milinda is the Pali pronunciation of the Greek name Menander, and this was a king left over from the conquests of Alexander the Great. This was a king of a region which is now in Afghanistan. And he has invited this venerable monk named Nagasena to come teach him about Buddhism. So it's basically a series of questions that this king Menander, puts to Nagasena. And the one we're looking at today concerns rebirth. Raja aha, Bante Nagasena, Attikochi mato na Paṭisandahati. Now, this is kind of interesting. There's no actual, or at least to my eye, there's nothing here that is indicating that this statement is interrogative. But since we know it is Pañho, this Paṭisandahati, I think we are justified in reading this as a question. So the king said, "Venerable Nagasena, is there someone who, having died, is not reborn?" Now we'll pull this apart a little bit. Bante Nagasena is the vocative. We still hear Bante used today, just venerable. It's used as a polite form of address to monks. And the monk in question might technically have to have been a monk for so many reigns or so many years. But Bante Nagasena is the proper name. I'm not sure of the meaning of Nagasena. It looks like it could be Naga, so elephants, maybe, kind of like majestic elephants. And Sena could be an army. So if anyone has insight into that, please let me know. Atti. Now, since we're taking this as a question, this will be is there. This is the third person singular present active indicative of us. That is as, the root us, meaning to be. Is there kochi? Ko by itself means who, and when it has this chi, it becomes indefinite. So whoever or someone. Here we're taking it as just someone. Is there someone, and I should say this is nominative, masculine nominative singular, matto. Matto is the past participle of marati, to die. So someone who has died, na Paṭisandahati. Na is our negating particle, and Paṭisandahati, this is our third person singular present active indicative. This is the verb form you'll find in the dictionary. Now, when I first came across this verb, it just seemed like a really long word, many syllabled, a polysyllabic word, and it didn't, there was no way for me to really wrap my head around what it meant. But actually, you can break it apart into this prefix, pati, and then sandahati. Pati means, in this case, something like again or re. And then sandahati, you can actually remember that if you're familiar with the term, the kind of the grammatical term sandhi, which we really find in Sanskrit, which describes the coming together of vowels, or really of just sounds. And that term is used in Pali as well. So we get a clue here. The main meaning of sandahati is to join. So this verb means rejoin. And we would have to understand, is a consciousness rejoining a body or joining up with another body. I believe Bhikkhu Bodhi translated this as relinking, the same idea. Now, I think it's common in Buddhism to talk of rebirth as opposed to reincarnation. That is a slight technical difference. I think, strictly speaking, the doctrine of reincarnation means that there's a immutable part of us that travels from body to body, from incarnation to incarnation. Of course, Buddhism holds that there is no such entity, so a new term is usually used, but strictly speaking, Vedantists might agree with Buddhists as well on this point. So the term may not be completely important if we understand what's actually being talked about. Now we will go on. Tero aha kochi Paṭisandahati kochi na Paṭisandahati. I should actually mention, before we go on, Paṭisandahati would end with a short I. We have a long I here because it is followed by this T, marking the end of a quote or question in this case. Tero means elder or senior, and it is specifically used with reference to monks. And we still have this word Theravada, which means the doctrine or the teaching of the elders, of the monks. Aha, again, the third person singular perfect form, said, kochi. So we get kochi again, and here probably meaning some, Paṭisandahati, some are reborn or relink, kochi na Paṭisandahati, some do not, or some are not reborn. And again, we have this lengthening of the I here. Ko Paṭisandahati, ko na Paṭisandahati. Now that T tells us that's the ending of that statement. So this next part is going to go back to the Raja. Ko Paṭisandahati, ko na Paṭisandahati. Probably at this point not too hard to figure out the question. Here we get ko without the chi. So this is an actual interrogative. Who? Who is reborn? Who is not reborn? Then Nagasena responds here. Sakileso Maharaja Paṭisandahati, Nikileso na Paṭisandahati. Now this is a very interesting statement. Sakileso. We've come across sa before, and that means with. And kileso means a stain, a soil, a defilement, particularly the raga, dosa, moha type, greed, anger, and delusion. So, and really here it's functioning as an adjective. We see this O here. So basically one who is with a defilement, Paṭisandahati, is reborn. And then we have here, Nagasena does not address the king as Raja, but Maharaja, great king. And like all vocatives, it is not first in its clause. Then we have this next part, Nikileso na Paṭisandahati. Ni is a prefix that means being without. So the person without a stain or the impurity is not reborn. And now the king asks, Tvam pana bante Nagasena Paṭisandahati. And here, maybe for emphasis or just to be clear that now the king is not talking about a kochi or a ko, he says, you, Tvam. This is our second person singular personal pronoun, you. And this pana here means something like then or now, and we might take it to mean something like, and what about you, Venerable Nagasena? Paṭisandahati. This is from, obviously, the same verb, Paṭisandahati, but this is the future tense, the second person singular future active indicative. Will you, Venerable Nagasena, be reborn? To which Nagasena replies, Sache, if, Maharaja, O king, sa upadano bhavisami, Paṭisandahisami. Sache anupadano bhavisami, na Paṭisandahisamiti. We get our sa again. Upadano literally means fuel, something that would fuel a next life, a further existence. And so specifically it means an attachment or grasping. Actually, he should have looked at the verb first here. So he says if, and then we have bhavisami. So this is the future of bhavati. This is the first person singular future active indicative. If I will be, and then sa upadano, if I will be in a state of having attachment or grasping, Paṭisandahati. So this is, again, the first person singular future active indicative. I will be reborn. I will relink. I will rejoin. Sache an upadano bhavisami na Paṭisandahati. If, and then everything here is the same except an. It is not upadano, and it is not sa upadano, which would mean with. This is un, meaning the opposite, or not having. If I am in a state of not having attachment or not having fuel, I will not be reborn. Now, by the king's next response, we know that he is satisfied with the question. He's bringing this question to an end. Kalosi Bhante Nagasena T. So this final T, marking that this is a quotation. Bhante Nagasena. Notice this is lengthened because it's followed by this word T. Venerable Nagasena. Now, Kalosi, I think we can get the meaning. To be quite honest with you, I'm not sure what the exact components are. So I'll give you what I believe they could be. The first part is not in question. Kala or kalo means like clever, fit, proper, right. But the next part is a little less clear. I do believe it's a form of the verb to be from the root us, as. So it's either second person singular present active indicative ussi, which would have this short a, and there kalo, just the o supplants the a. That's the Sunday we talked about earlier. So you get kalosi. You are clever. The king might be responding that way. Now it could be that ussi is asi, the third person singular aorist of to be. And it could be that he's saying that response, it was clever. And as far as that goes, the same verb form would hold for the second person aorist, the second person singular aorist. So he could have said, you were clever, meaning in your response. I think the meaning is clear. What the actual derivation is, I'm not sure. And I would welcome any input on that, dear listener. Lastly, just one comment, and this is kind of ballooned into a rather long installment. But what I like about Nagasena's response is that he does not claim to be so enlightened beyond measure that he is 100% on track for escaping rebirth. He just kind of lays it out. If a person dies, including him, with desire, with attachment, that person will be reborn. Which makes me think of an episode in the Srimad Bhagavatam where a king later in life became a hermit and had achieved enlightenment, but had also made friends with a deer. And when the king died, he thought of this deer and was reborn as a deer. I believe I have that right. I read from Swami Prabhavananda's sort of retelling of that. So if someone has more insight into that episode, I couldn't even tell you where that is in that collection at this point. But at any rate, that is good food for thought for all of us. And that is why I believe the end of the Buddhist path has to do with being rid of the three unwholesome roots, raga, dosa, and moha.